Hello, hello. Welcome to this edition of, wow, I am speeding today. This edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I am Jay Ruane, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, my man over there, Seth Price. Seth, how's your week going this week?
Going pretty well. There are moments where I think I got it all together, and moments where I think I'm kidding myself.
Well, it's funny. You know me. I'm Mr. Systems. I started posting some systems back in our Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group yesterday. I got a bunch of engagement. I've got a bunch more coming. I actually have somebody who's going to be helping me in about 2 weeks. Going to come in. We're going to have a whole series that I've been working on that's going to get cleaned up and sanitized. So a lot of good stuff coming in the Facebook group. But here's the issue I got today. Systems are phenomenal if the people follow the systems. We had a flame out today in court where a lawyer went to go cover something, and the pod didn't follow the systems. Sent a lawyer to court who should not have been handling a particular type of case, basically because of mindset and how they approach the world. They're great on certain things, but bad on this type of case. And the client was insisting that no, we can't move the court date, we got to be here. So they passed off the file to this lawyer who proceeded to walk into the courthouse and have a nuclear explosion against the young prosecutor who now, we're persona non grata in this courthouse. We got to go mend fences, and we will mend fences. But you know it's one of these things where we found, hey, I got the system, we know what works, and yet people are like, well, we're going to make an exception in this situation, and the exception blew things up. So how do you keep people, other than having examples of this to talk about, and we're going to talk about it for sure at our weekly meeting, at our leadership meeting, at our quarterly meeting, how do you keep people to follow the systems? Because look, we built these systems over decades, and just because you're here for 6 months and you think, oh, I got this, trust me, man, I've been doing this for a while.
Well, look, and I believe me, I get it. I think that this topic comes up, especially as we start to put people overseas, where systems are essential if you're going to make those employees work. Let me ask you a question here. Was this a question where they knew the right answer but didn't follow it? Or did they not look at what to do? Like, how did the system break down? So you had a written out system that was not followed?
We have a lawyer who is handling a certain types of cases.
But is it still like, is there a checklist?
Oh yeah, this lawyer handles these types of cases, and literally they were like, we need a body. But I can tell you from the
But
personality type of this lawyer, they cannot go to this
okay, but
courthouse.
I'll challenge you on this. Take an Andrew Finkelstein, right? His philosophy, I just did a recording with him, a 7-part interview, 7 different topics, sort of master class. Because I mean, he's, his mind, business mind, and his attitude is that if you empower people and they are looking at a situation and they use their best knowledge, this is something I've always believed. If somebody thinks about it and makes a decision based on everything in front of them, they see a system, they see a crisis, they see what they need to do, that you need to empower people to make those decisions. And as long as it's thought through and not like, I didn't think about it, I ignored it, rather than there were no good choices, I took the best possible choice. Are there times where, yes, the result was disastrous, understood, but if somebody was sitting there looking at it, did they not follow the system, or do they feel that they were in a situation the system didn't cover and they had to make a call in order to get to make sure a client was covered in court?
So here's the way I view the situation. I have no problem if you are empowered and you say, I made a judgment call. If you can logically explain to me the steps you made in making that judgment call. But what I think happened in this situation is there wasn't any thought process. It was just, oh, we're just going to do this. And because if they had thought through it, they would have said, this lawyer really only handles this stuff. There,
Could they have gotten
I guess
somebody else?
yeah, they could have said, okay, we're going to have the lawyer who's normally in this courthouse show up at 11 for the second call rather than at 9 for the first
And
call.
was that, and look, I'm asking
Yeah.
ignorant questions. Is that something that's well known that it's an option?
Yes.
So, the question is, did somebody goof? Maybe to me, there are systems And I think you're moving beyond that to there are like rules more than because there's I mean semantics, but there are systems where we file this, we do this, we do this versus this is because it's not that they're following a checklist. A situation comes up and the question is they either know the information or they have to go back, but they weren't following best practices more than a system.
Yeah,
And
maybe that's what it
I'm
is. I mean,
splitting hairs, but it's not like Mr. Systems is like dead. Somebody is sitting there and they made a bad call,
yeah,
right? They, and let's say either there are different situations, right? There's brain fart where they're like, oh man, I knew that but didn't do it. There's I didn't think, which is painful but
that
happens. There's all of those, but if it didn't think, then it's not a system because unless there's a laminated thing like the football coach in front of them, they have to go and figure out where to get that information from, which isn't really the system. It's just that they violated best practices more than a system. And
no,
again, I bring this back because I don't want to deflate Mr. Systems who's sitting here. It's not like Jay failed. Like we had our buddy Gerber on here a number of months back, and he's like, if you followed his rule, you wouldn't have any people to make these decisions in the first place. It would all be a SaaS-based decision-making tree.
right.
But part of what allows you to make a living is that SaaS hasn't come in because other guys would kick our ass and wipe us out, and
Right.
we're left with, and it had this lawyer not blown up a situation in court, right? Like he's a barred human being, a barred
Right,
lawyer.
and can handle high level stuff in a
Right.
different
So in one
atmosphere.
sense,
It's just
yes, but for that, but at the end of the day, are you, I mean, again, is this like, why can't a lawyer go to court without causing nuclear blow up? Like,
it's just they don't have the personality for the
but there's
interpersonal dynamics of
personality and there's don't blow something up. There's a big difference. Like, I
no,
mean,
well, I mean, I'll push back a little in that, what we do as criminal defense lawyers, is a lot of picking up on the nuance of the conversation and that type of thing. And an appellate lawyer doesn't have that skill set. They're
understood.
looking black and
Hold on,
white.
But if you had said, hey, red flag, do not send this person, and that's there. It's like, part of your warning signs, right? Don't drink the
Right.
propane and don't send this lawyer. Great. But if this is one of a gazillion things that's going through, it's not a system, it's a best practice, it's a rule, then yes, did they do something they shouldn't have done or whatever? But the question is that there should be a backup, which is the appellate lawyer goes and doesn't cause World War III. I mean,
Right. What I think I need in that situation is appellate lawyer. Here is the black and white playbook for when you go to court, you show up and you say, hi, I'm so and so from Ruane Attorneys. The other lawyer is unavailable. I don't know anything about the file. I'm here to request a continuance to such and such a date. And then you get out of there and it's been, and that could be the system. And the best practices is to send the right lawyer the first time. And if you can't, you have a playbook for the lawyer who doesn't understand the nuance of interpersonal
right. But
negotiation.
I feel like this is to a certain extent an HR issue, like HR as far as like the which lawyers go. And I know that this is my law partner always says this, whenever it's a one-off, that's when we get into trouble all the
Right.
time. Every issue we have is the one-off. Stuff that repeats, we generally get right. But when something is out of the box, like, hey, we can't do this, people's brains start zooming. How do I fill that hole? And when that happens,
Well, then let me ask you though,
yeah.
and this will go again off topic from what we had discussed pre-show. Do you say, hey, we're a law firm and we get excited about the one-off things and it allows creative legal maneuvering and it allows us to scratch that itch? Or do you become the Michael Gerber? We don't do other things. We do, two or three or four things. We do them exceptionally well. We do them over and over again, knowing full well that, you may lose some lawyers who say, yeah, I love doing this, but I'd like to try something else every now and then, try
Oh
something
no,
new.
I'm already there. Like our lawyers, with one exception, do one thing over and over again, one area of practice.
Right.
I have one lawyer that goes over between criminal and family. But other than that, everybody's in their lane doing their thing. So to me, that's a business decision. And I'll give you an example. We've civil litigation that's not personal injury, like fee for service fee disputes. I had a guy, he was with me, didn't make that much money, he moved on, nice guy. I've never made that area lucrative. And I've actually made a decision. A buddy of mine does it. I diss him all of that work. Does a great job, makes a buck. Would I love to get a piece of it? Maybe, but it's better to let our people stay in the lane, because every time somebody called and said, I need local counsel to run to court, or I need, I need to do a matter, and in the personal injury space, there's a cadence, right? The case comes in, there's pre-lit, you do your, you get your demand out, then you do discovery, versus when somebody brings you an active dispute in litigation, you're immediately, and that becomes much more of a one-off. My machine is not good at dealing with that, and I have punted. And now over and over again, local counsel situations, just got one from Mink, if you know him, guy does some cool defamation work in the Midwest. And I get these calls and I'm like, you know what, I could make a buck, but you know what, the right answer is not to break the system, not to do the one-off. Now, multi-million-dollar case, maybe, but for the average case, stay in your lane.
So then this leads me to another question about this, and this is a conversation I had probably in the last 10 days, 11 days ago, with the guy who pumps my septic. Okay, so we've got our scheduled appointment. He comes in and he pumps the septic out, and I'm talking to him. He's a nice guy. He's been in the business for 43 years, and he's like, look, I'm ready to be done. He's like, I've got my truck, I've got my pump, he's like, I can't find anybody to buy my business. He's like, I've got a book of clients that constantly will need work. He's like, my business generates, low mid six figures a year. He's like, he's like, I've made a very good living off of this money. I put all my kids through graduate school. I'm making money. He's like, I can't find anybody to buy my business. Number one, because kids nowadays, and this is him saying, he's like, nobody wants to pump shit for a living. And I get that, right? And he's like, and I can't find somebody to buy the business. He's like, I'm at a point now where I just want somebody to buy the truck from me. I'll give them the clientele because I want my clients to have somebody who can service them. And he's like, I can't find anybody. And I'm thinking to myself, how does that translate to law? And so I had a conversation with a couple of the lawyers. I said, there are discrete areas of law that some boomer lawyers that are 60, 70 have really sort of cornered the market for years. One thing in my county, there's really one lawyer who does all the liquor applications. He's 73. And for years, everyone just sent him the stuff because he has a system. He knows the players. He can show up at the bar or the restaurant and be like, you got to get that fixed. You got to get that fixed. They're going to come in. They're going to approve you, blah, 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 that type of thing. And I'm thinking, there are opportunities in law to take over certain niches, not necessarily whole verticals. I'm not saying go into PI and try to be, but there are, certain verticals where you can identify, maybe align with that person who wants to leave, take over some of that business type of thing. But you have to be paying attention to those things. Well, and it could be lucrative. If I wanted to, I could spend $150,000, buy this septic truck and the stuff, and I can have a business that's generating $400,000 a year if I just found somebody who wanted to pump shit tanks for a living. Well, why shouldn't I do that?
Why it becomes an HR play. So like the question is, and look, they talk about law firm sales. I'm a little cynical. I know their sales. I know some of the big firms sell. There are people who are trying to get these things to an over under of 3x EBITDA, which essentially may mean 1 year of gross revenue. But at the end of the day, the odds of those things happening and closing. There's a guy that we both know from one of the masterminds. He runs a Spanish PI practice, and he's always telling me my associate's going to buy this. And I'm like, I listen to it. I'm like, that's never happening at the economics you're giving me. Just not. They're not going to close that deal, and you're going to sit there. And there's nothing wrong with it, but would you be better off saying, hey, I have somebody who really likes this. Let me continue to sort of like be the silent partner, pull the strings, make sure the media is right, and let them do it and take a percentage. Because if you did a percentage if you got 50% of the profits, hypothetically, for a couple years, are you the same place than if you got that miracle sale that may or may not go, doesn't note close, and so for this guy, to me, the better answer is you bring somebody in to be an employee. If they're making that much money and it's a one-man operation, you're telling me that if you offered somebody $75,000 a year, they wouldn't run that operation for you. I don't buy that that can't be found. So it's an HR question. Put that person in play, right? After a year, you can make a decision. Do I want to sit there and make my $300,000 profit instead of 400, whatever it was, and if you can find the talent. And
I mean, think about it. If you take out $200,000 a year for 10 years doing that, you sold your firm for $2 million.
Exactly. So, and I look, I'll also pivot back to the question you talked before, which is I think that in our B2C world of micro firms, it is harder to find those people with those niche practices because some of those people, at least in my world, are inside of larger firms doing that. And so that I'll give you a great story. A guy I went to law school with, this awesome guy, African-American guy, was sort of his, rock star, junior associate. And the guy he was working for a major, like very interesting trade association, left. I don't know if he went to the trade association and he was, I don't know, let's say a third year associate. And he went to the trade and said, hey, he's left. I've been doing your work for the last 3 years. Will you give me the book? And that became his niche. And he ended up running that book of business for his career. So, it's right place, right time. But the reason he was able to do that was he was already doing some of it rather than because there's so many shiny objects out there that we see. You and I get these offers all the time. You should do this. You should do that. I had a cousin who had this deal, very lucrative, dealing with unclaimed monies. And he had found a way to make a really, really nice living. I mean, beyond nice, and it was one of those deals that like I have pivoted to that and stopped my law firm and made a nice. I could have, but I actually instead built my firm to what it was. Had I been distracted with that, what would that have done differently? So how often do you get those? And I think that it's figuring out what your opportunity costs are. For you, would you be better off with somebody running traffic slash DUI slash criminal in another part of the state versus, picking up a niche practice like that, where at the end of the day, it's his noggin. It's not some junior person. He's done one thing his whole career and knows it. Are you going to stop what you're doing and do that? No, you're trying to get out of this. So
Right. And that's part of the challenge. And like if you are going to bring in a niche vertical, like you got to learn it enough so that you can create the systems for it. Because I guarantee you, Homeboy doesn't have any written systems after X number of years of doing this. So, that's one of the things that you need to do.
and interesting you say this. So I was one of the things I feel like I've failed at over time. I don't know what's going on, but Jason,
I know it's kind of cool. I just put up my hand and things are like blowing up. It's kind of cool.
One of the things that I feel like I failed at, right? We built out criminal, we built out PI. Family has huge opportunity. And I've seen some people around the nation do a really nice job with it. And part of it's I'm not a family lawyer. I don't have the systems in place. And the people that really do make a very, very nice living there, generally, their model, besides, some people do rock star stuff, that's different. Some people do elite stuff and they do it, but it's the training of junior people. Goes back to the J. Ruane, first year versus third year. The only way they can get enough talent is to bring people in as first years, train them up internally, and turn them into viable lawyers. If you do that, you'll have a consistent stream of lawyers. If you try to retrofit the dredge that's on the market, it is brutal in what's available. I've been looking for 3 years for third to 10th year associates. The ones that are good are given a piece of action. And the only way, in my estimation, to really scale, when I look at the firms in my market that have done this, is to have a program where people come in, get trained. There's some of them are going to leave. You're not going to retain them all, but if you pay the right ones enough and stay ahead of the curve. And so I look at that goes back to Mr. Systems, which is it is the areas that you have the systems that work. It's the areas that you want something but don't have the systems in place. And it may circle back to your original point, which is, you have a lot of systems, but how granular do you get your systems? And is it a system, or is it just something that is a known rule, but isn't really a system? You want to call it a system, but is it on a checklist that before somebody goes to court, only this person goes to court? And if not, J needs to be asked. Is there an if then that allows you to prevent that?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, and I think that's part of the conversation that you need to have as a law firm owner as you are scaling things out. You need to identify your core systems that are, this is the way we do it, we don't do anything else. And then also, this is when you need to, these are our best practices. And if you're going to divert from those, I think you need to loop in people who have more institutional knowledge, more experience necessarily. And quite frankly, we can have best practices for intake. I may no longer be the best person to talk about best practices for intake. Yeah, we have intake systems, but then there are best practices. And I probably am not the person to give you what best practices would be at this point, because I have been, out of that day to day for so long that I would not know, the nature of the callers in today's world. I mean, I haven't done regular intake since, I mean, at least 6 years, and that's just something that, I mean, maybe it's even more than that. I'm trying to think. But like, those are the types of things that you need to, and that's the inflection point, right? That is the transition from being, lawyer to law firm owner to being CEO or whatever you want to call it, where you can say, hey, look, I am not the best person to answer this question. We have people on it, and you go get those answers and bring them to your team and put them into place. Because a lot of people at our level are involved in almost too much in their firm. They're getting into the weeds. They're saying, "Let me set up the Google stuff or the Facebook ads, or let me sit in on every first round of interviews." And they're being busy, but they're not necessarily being productive.
No, and look, there's so much there. I mean, we could, and I get it. We're guilty of it. We do what we like, but the
Right.
sooner that you can have a team, whether internal or external, that is able to sift talent. Great example. And that you're only brought in, like once somebody knows what your firm needs, allowing them to do all of the vetting. Again, that's easier said than done, because there are going to be periods in your firm, keeping it real for many of our who either don't have anybody, or the person they have doesn't have that judgment, and you get stuck between those two worlds.
Yeah, and that's and the question is, I know a lot of us, we've gone overseas labor to fill some contract positions. And some of those have been just crushed it for us here at our firm. And I know have crushed it for you and that type of thing. But when you are hiring, when you are scaling, I think you need to take some of that, intangible into consideration.
But it's also not it's a free lunch. And that if we kept this real, how many meltdowns did your intake have before you sort of got it close to getting it right? How many times you call me and said, "Oh, everything's great," and the next week you're like, "Oh shit."
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you're like, hey, I can offshore this and I can save, $10 an hour. And what I'm finding now, my kick ass, remote intake people that work nights and weekends and they're not necessarily on a schedule, but they're picking up those after hours calls and stuff. These people are rocks. They're getting paid the equivalent of, almost the equivalent of what they'd be making here, US 10 years ago. They're like 10 years ago, a college student coming out would pay him 50,000. Some of these remote people are making really good money, 40 grand a year, American, if you're living in, the hills of San Juan Capistrano. That's really good money.
It's funny, and I know we got to land the plane in the next few minutes, but I was, one thing that I saw at a life moment. We have one practice group, and that practice group is the least profitable in our firm. It's excellent representation, too good almost for what we're charging, but the market's not allowing movement north. And in doing so, I sort of spoke to myself, hey, this group is approximately a seven-figure practice group. It's a single lawyer running it. why is this person so not profitable compared to other areas? And partly to the area of law, but partially I looked and like there was no international labor layered in. They weren't following the best practices the rest of our firm did, where if there's a rock star, if there's a J knowledge in DUI, while you like to go to court, you're best there as a figurehead, whether it be selling, whether it be closing, I mean, whatever pieces that you want to do. But the idea that somebody is practicing, all day on fixed fee cases, clearly, if you don't change the makeup of lawyer hours to, let's say, drafters or paralegal time, if you don't get that mix right on a flat fee case, you're just not going to. And so it's sort of, it brings a lot of this together, which is when you have something, and for many of our listeners, they haven't either used anybody internationally or for a division that they're not using somebody there. It's until you have the systems, and it's a question of which comes first. And I have become an advocate for hiring somebody, not knowing how they'll fit in, knowing that there's going to be lost time, but that with time, you'll figure those systems out and then put them in place. Not that you don't want systems to begin, but talk to me a little bit about your thought, because you're Mr. Systems. Do you think that there's ever places where you have systems, but you're going to hire somebody without really understanding how they're going to fit in at a relatively nominal hourly rate, and then fill their dance card and then build the systems backwards?
Yeah, actually, we're doing that right now with a new role that we've developed in the office of discovery clerk, and we've never really had somebody focusing on that area. So one of the things that I did yesterday was I met with her and we talked a little bit about where we see the role going. She's only been here for 3 weeks and she's still learning the interpersonal dynamics and how to use technology that we have and that type of thing. But the whole thing is to empower her to develop those systems for us and build that out, and then train everybody else in the office on how we are now going to do things. And so we set waypoints, and I think we're on the right track. But it was really a hire for, we know we need this role. We're not going to create the role until we have somebody in it, and then we're going to task them with helping us define it and create all the systems for it, because that's really the best way to identify the problems. Because coming from 1,000-foot view down, I can't see the problems that are going to pop up in this position. And so let's try to make it work. And I think that's really worked for us so far. It seems like it's on the right path, and I'll report more as we go.
Awesome. Let's get you out of here. I know you got a call to make.
Yeah, I got it 12:30. It's one of those days. So thank you guys so much for being with me. Thank you for being with us here in the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm sorry this is such a short episode, but if you want to catch us, you can take us on the go anywhere you get your podcast. Just look us up, the Law Firm Blueprint. Of course, jump on into the Facebook group, Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group, where you can catch all the systems that I've posted, and there'll be more coming soon. That's going to do it for me. I'm Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye for now.